Welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe in the studios of our flagship stations, 89.3 Lakes FM and Civic Center TV on Comcast, Channel 15, and AT&T Channel 99, where you can also find us in the Birmingham Bloomfield area on Birmingham Area Municipal Access and on City Cable 15 of Southfield. Join us live on Channel 10 every day in Waterford on the Media Network of Waterford and live to tape on Channel 10 in Orion Township and Lake Orion on Orion Neighborhood Television, otherwise known as ONTV. That's what all the kids call it. You can find us also on the radio this week, live to tape on 88.1 The Biff Radio Network in the Birmingham, Bloomfield, and Troy areas. That is a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District. Find us online on our Facebook pages at Civic Center TV 15 and at Lakes FM, on our website, civiccentertv.com, and beginning at 11 o'clock and only beginning at 11 o'clock on My Michigan TV or MyMy at mymytv.com. Visit that at 11 o'clock where you can learn more about downloading their free MyMyTV apps for your smartphone and smart TV. And from 11 o'clock to noon, take us with you on the road on My Michigan TV. All that information is on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you can also find all of our programs on demand and each individual interview as well. Keep up with the Megacast on your own time, anywhere, anytime, civiccentertv.com/megacast. Then let's head over to our coronavirus page, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where we have links to the most up-to-date information on COVID-19 from reliable expert resources from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention at the federal level, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, statewide, and locally with the Oakland County Health Division, so that you can stay updated on everything that you need to know about the spread of COVID-19, precautionary tactics that can prevent the spread of COVID-19, such as masking and distancing, and as well as vaccines and booster shots. Also on our coronavirus page, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, we feature articles from many journalistic outlets throughout the state of Michigan in order to keep you updated on COVID-19 and other stories making headlines across the Great Lakes state. Our top story today from the Detroit Free Press: a judge has ruled the Oxford school shooting suspect, his name will not be used in their court. At the request of the prosecutor, a judge has decided that the name of the Oxford school shooting suspect will not be mentioned in her courtroom during the duration of the parents' cases. Quote, there is some precedence, but no real legal authority for the mandatory exclusion of the shooter's name, said Oakland County Circuit Judge Cheryl Matthews in her decision on Tuesday. Matthews continued on saying, quote, however, calling the shooter by name does not appear to have relevance to these proceedings, and prohibiting its use does not appear to prejudice the defense in any way, and closed quote. The defendants she is referring to are Jennifer and James Crumbly, who are the parents of the shooter in the United States first parents of a school shooter in the United States charged in a mass school shooting allegedly carried out by their 15-year-old son. Their case has sparked international attention not only because of the precedents being set in their prosecution, but because it involves a detail that prosecutors believe make this case different from any other school shooting. It was the parents, they say, who bought their son the gun that was used to shoot up his school. Given the intense publicity over the parents' case, Oakland County prosecutor Karen McDonald asked the judge to keep the shooting suspect's name out of the parents' case to prevent future massacres by copycat shooters seeking glory. Quote, shooters want to be famous. It's one of the key motivators for most shooters, and it was definitely a motivator for the Oxford High School shooter, in close quote, McDonald said in a statement. Prosecutor McDonald continued on saying he wanted to be famous and he wanted to be remembered, in closed quote. But Prosecutor McDonald has vowed to do her best to erase his memory and to prevent any future shooter wannabes from trying to one-up the Oxford suspect. Quote, each shooter wants to be as famous or more famous than the last shooter, McDonald said, continuing on, quote, so when we repeat the Oxford school shooter's name and continuously publicize his photo, we're contributing to future shootings. I'm not going to be part of that, in closed quote. The prosecution has portrayed the Crumbly's son as a, quote, disturbed, in close quote, lonely and attention-starved teenager whose life went from having only one friend before the shooting to getting, quote-unquote, fan mail from all over the world after the shooting. In an effort to keep the teenager locked up in adult jail, prosecutors disclosed to the judge the boy's jailhouse communications, including one in which he asked a jail official, quote, how do I get my fan mail, in closed quote. In granting McDonald's request, the judge has ordered both sides not to speak the suspect's name in court or use it in court filings. The judge on Tuesday also assigned 2 additional lawyers to the Crumblys out of concern that their case could trigger a mistrial because their lawyers work for the same law firm. The judge said she was concerned that this could create a conflict of interest down the road between the spouses, so she gave them each an independent lawyer to advise them of potential conflicts. The Crumbleys are charged with involuntary manslaughter for their alleged roles in the mass shooting. Prosecutors say the couple ignored a troubled and depressed son who needed help, but instead of getting him help, they bought him a gun and never shared that information with the school when they had the chance to do so. Their son is charged with first-degree murder for the deaths of 4 students who were killed in the massacre on November 30th that also injured 6 students and a teacher, several who are still struggling to recover from life-altering injuries. The suspect has pleaded not guilty and is planning an insanity defense as well. He is due in court on Thursday for a hearing, though Judge Matthews' decision does not apply in his court case. The teenagers' lawyers could not be reached for comment. The Crumbleys have pleaded not guilty and maintained that they had no way of knowing their son could carry out a school shooting despite mounting evidence, and that they kept their guns safely stored in their home in the student's backpack, that they are not responsible for the student's deaths. It's your gun. You're responsible for how your gun is used. Also making headlines at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. From Bridge, Michigan, $8 million has been awarded for Michigan election security amid funding disputes. Local and county clerks have access to $8 million to improve voter security, but the requests for additional legislative support ahead of the 2022 election remains unanswered. The Michigan Bureau of Elections on Tuesday announced federal funding will be available to local and county election clerks to buy new locks and cameras, upgrade polling software, and other security-related improvements before the November elections. The Bureau is providing the money through the Help America Vote Act, which Congress passed in 2002 to provide clerks with additional funding. Great timing on that. It only took 20 years. The announcement came the same day a state court dismissed Republican-backed lawsuits seeking to stop private companies from funding 450 Michigan clerks. Ongoing disputes over private and public funding of elections come at a time when there are sharp partisan differences over the security of Michigan election laws following the 2020 presidential election, when clerks were strained by the volume of absentee ballots while facing scrutiny amid former President Donald Trump's unfounded allegations of voter fraud. The $8 million was made available in response to a letter sent in February by the associations representing the state's municipal and county clerks asking for additional funding ahead of the 2022 election. The groups also asked legislators to pass procedural changes. Delta Township Clerk Mary Clark, president of the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks, said the federal grant allots $1,500 per precinct. Quote, that provides clerks a funding stream that they provides clerks a funding stream to do some things that they likely cannot do without it, Clark said to Bridge, Michigan on Tuesday. Continuing on, Clerk Clark said, quote, I'm going to get a new lock system put on the office doors. It's very timely and well thought out, and closed quote. BOE Director Jonathan Brader said on Tuesday at a House Elections and Ethics Committee hearing that the grant funding is a one-time allocation based on temporary dollars. Quote, on an ongoing basis, a more reliable state funding stream would help ensure that in future years those security practices are able to continue, Brader said. Local officials have complained of needing more resources to efficiently and accurately handle results. In 2020, many clerks' offices in Michigan and elsewhere accepted grants from a philanthropy associated with Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg to help with election costs. A state court on Tuesday dismissed the lawsuit over private funding awarded to more than 450 Michigan clerks during the 2020 election, rejecting GOP claims that the election grants dispensed during the pandemic were aimed at Democratic cities to unfairly boost liberal turnout. The claims are, quote, moot and closed quote because the privately funded grants from the Center for Tech and Civic Life, the nonprofit funded by Zuckerberg, quote, were available to all jurisdictions that sought them, and close quote, said Michigan Court of Claims Judge Thomas Cameron in his 10-page opinion. The Michigan House and Senate last year each passed legislation to bar private grant funding for future elections, as several other states have done so. Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer vetoed both of those bills. Michigan Republicans are now attempting to go around her through the Secure My Vote petition drive, which among other changes would prohibit donations to help fund elections. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, both Democrats, on Tuesday celebrated the dismissal of the private grant lawsuit, calling it a failed attempt to undermine confidence in the election process. Quote, it was meritless and misguided, and the court rightly noted the ability for nonpartisan, nonprofit organizations to work directly with local communities to ensure that they have the support that they need to protect and count every valid vote. Secretary Benson said in a statement, continuing on, quote, "It further underscores the need for legislature and federal government to provide sustained funding for elections so that clerks across the state and political spectrum have consistent and sufficient funds to run accessible and secure elections," and closed quote. In 2020, clerks were given 8 additional hours before Election Day to prepare absentee ballots for counting. Brader, the state election director, said clerks' need for additional time varied based on the jurisdiction's population and specific election procedures. He said he believes clerks need more than 8 hours to reap the benefits of pre-processing absentee ballots. Quote, "Although clerks appreciated the time, it was something that was introduced relatively close to the election, so there wasn't a lot of time to build it into their planning," Brader said. 17 states allow clerks to process absentee ballots before Election Day. Another 16 states, including the state of Michigan, allow clerks to process ballots before the polls close on Election Day. And 17 states don't allow clerks to process ballots until polls close on the day of the election. Republicans have been introducing legislation to tighten voter laws, including requiring the Secretary of State to remove voters who don't respond to a letter notifying them that they need to update their birth date or who have not voted since 2000 from the state's qualified voter file. But like other legislation passed by Republicans over election rules, vetoes for those measures are very likely to come from Governor Whitmer, of course, a Democrat. Lastly, making headlines at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus from the Detroit News, Moderna says its low-dose COVID shots work for kids under 6 years old. Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine works in babies, toddlers, and preschoolers, the company announced on Wednesday. And if regulators agree, it could mean a chance to finally start vaccinating the littlest kids by summer. Moderna said that in the coming weeks, it would ask regulators in the United States and in Europe to authorize 2 small-dose shots for youngsters under 6 years old. The company is also seeking to have large-dose shots cleared for older children and teens in the United States. The nation's 18 million children under 5 are the only age group not yet eligible for vaccination. Competitor Pfizer currently offers kid-sized doses for school-age children and full-strength shots for those 12 years of age and older. But parents have anxiously awaited protection for younger tots, disappointed by setbacks and confusion over which shots might work and when. Pfizer is testing even smaller doses for children under 5, but had to add a 3rd shot to its study when 2 didn't prove strong enough. Those results are expected by early April. Vaccinating the littlest, quote, "has been somewhat of a moving target over the last couple of months," said Dr. Bill Muller of Northwestern University, an investigator in Moderna's pediatric studies, in an interview before the company released its findings this week. Quote, "There's still, I think, a lingering urgency to try to get that done as soon as possible," end close quote, he said. The younger the child, the smaller the dose being tested. Moderna said a quarter of the dose it uses for adults worked well for youngsters under the age of 6. Moderna enrolled about 6,900 tots in the study of the 25 microgram doses. Early data shows after 2 shots, youngsters developed virus-fighting antibody levels just as strong as young adults, getting regular shots, the company said in a press release. Moderna said that the small doses were safe and the main side effects were mild fevers like those associated with commonly used pediatric vaccines. Once Moderna submits the data to the FDA, regulators will debate whether to authorize emergency use of the small doses for young children. If so, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will decide whether to recommend them. While COVID-19 generally isn't as dangerous to youngsters as it is to adults, some do become severely ill. The CDC says about 400 children younger than 5 have died from COVID-19 since the pandemic's onset in March of 2020. The Omicron variant hit children especially hard, with those under age 5 hospitalized at higher rates than at the peak of the previous Delta surge, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. COVID-19 vaccines in general don't prevent infection with Omicron mutant as well as they fended off earlier variants, but they still do offer strong protection against severe illness as a result of COVID-19 infection. Moderna reported that the same trend occurred in the trial of children under 6 conducted during the Omicron surge. While there were no severe illnesses, the vaccine proved just under 44% effective in preventing any infection in babies up to age 2 and nearly 38% effective in preschoolers. Moderna also said Wednesday it will ask the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, to clear larger doses for older children. While other countries already have Moderna shots to be used in children as young as 6, the U.S. has limited its vaccine to adults only and to children ages 12 to 17. A Moderna request to expand its shots to 12 to 17-year-olds has been stalled for months, the company said Wednesday that armed with additional evidence, it is updating its FDA application for teen shots and requesting a green light for 6 to 11-year-olds as well. Moderna said its original adult dose, two 100 microgram shots, is effective and safe in 12 to 17-year-olds. For elementary age kids, it's using half of the adult dose. But the FDA never ruled on Moderna's application for teen shots because of a concern about a very rare side effect. Heart inflammation sometimes occurs in teens and young adults, mostly males, after receiving the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. Moderna is getting extra scrutiny because its shots are far higher of a dose than Pfizer's. The risk also seems linked to puberty, and regulators in Canada and Europe and elsewhere also have recently expanded Moderna vaccinations to kids as young as 6 years old. Quote, that concern has not been seen in younger children, in close quote, said Northwestern's Mueller, one of the independent investigators in Moderna's push for 6-year-olds and younger to be able to be vaccinated with a small dose of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine. All of those headlines on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, as well as those helpful links to accurate information on COVID-19 from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division. We have a great program ahead on this Wednesday edition of the Megacast. It should be Thursday. It certainly feels like it. Coming up, we'll be joined by award-winning playwright and Oakland University theater lecturer Kitty Dubin, followed by Oakland County Executive David Coulter at 10:40. That's all straight ahead. This is the Oakland County Megacast.
A message from the staff of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Program.
Anyone can be a victim of crime
and suffer lasting trauma, physically, emotionally, and financially.
But you are not alone.
If you're struggling financially due to a crime,
we're here
for you. Find out if you qualify for crime victim compensation. Call 877-251-7373 or visit michigan.gov/crime-victim.
A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Victim Services.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
We're joined now by a award-winning playwright and a lecturer in theater and playwriting at Oakland University. Kitty Dubin joins us now on the Michigan Megacast. Kitty, thank you for being with us.
Hi, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So can you tell us about your playwriting career? Before you got to Oakland University, and as you've been at Oakland University, tell us a little bit about your career and how it led you to ultimately teaching the next generation of playwrights about your craft.
Well, two things. I've always been a teacher. I started out actually in Cleveland, Ohio as a middle school teacher, and then moved to Detroit 52 years ago when I was 2 years old. Haha, only kidding. And then got my master's degree, and so I have always loved teaching. But I started writing plays when I was got my master's degree at Wayne State and had to write a play. It won a contest. It was produced, and I thought, wow, this is something I can do. So I started pursuing playwriting at the same time as teaching, and my two passions finally merged when I approached Oakland in 1997 to teach, and I've been continuing with my own career at the same time I've been teaching for these past 25 years at Oakland.
So playwriting, much like any kind of writing, there's a different formula, there's a different approach that goes into writing a stage play versus a screenplay, writing a screenplay or a stage play versus a novel or a short story. So for you, where does your process start as you're devising a story and ultimately building that characterization and building that plot for the stage?
Well, I want to just pick up on what you just said, because the first thing I do in my classes is differentiate between a play script and a novel and a screenplay, because those kids have seen a million movies, read a million novels, and probably seen one or two plays ছি in their lives. So it's really important, because a play is its own animal. It's separate. It has similar story elements, but it's very different. Because when you're reading something, you can, take your time and, go back a few paragraphs if you haven't understood something, but a play comes at you very, very fast, and you have to digest it as you're going along. So that's very important. But what I stress with my students is really telling a story through dialogue, because it's all dialogue, of someone going through some kind of journey of change where they're a little bit different by the end of the play than they are when they start the play.
We're joined by Katie Duman, award-winning playwright and lecturer in playwriting at at Oakland University in their theater department, joining us on the Megacast. And it's such an important, the writing is so important in any form of entertainment, especially in original storytelling, whether it be for the stage or for the screen, whatever the case may be. The writing is really where it starts. And I don't recall who it was that I had heard say this, but I was watching an interview at some point. No, it was Bryan Cranston. I was watching some interview years ago with Bryan Cranston, who explained what made Breaking Bad such a great show and what made Malcolm in the Middle and other programs he's been on so excellent. And he said, you can have really great performance, but really great performance is never going to overshadow bad writing. Good writing can overshadow bad performance, but it won't be as good. When the two coalesce, you have something that's truly excellent. And that's why it's so important for this next generation of people that are going into show business, particularly for the theater, that they understand the importance of high-quality writing and putting on these great stage plays. And so when you arrived at Oakland University in 1997, there was no playwriting class, there was no playwriting program at Oakland University. And so for you, as you were envisioning what the needs would be for these future playwrights, given the context of your career up until that point, and as you've progressed through your career and your teaching career as well, how has that program then been developed and then changed over the years to make sure that these students understand just how important playwriting is to the theater?
Oh, there's so much in there. Yeah. I am a huge believer in structure. A play, they talk about a script having good bones, and a play really has to have good bones and really follow, it has to have all the elements of structure, a protagonist, an antagonist, rising action, all these things that you kind of learn in high school, but how to implement those things is another story. So I really stress that, and then it's changed so much over the years because, oh my goodness, I remember the first year I taught, someone wrote a play about coming out. Oh my gosh, that was like, huh, that subject really hadn't been explored. Well, now that, I'm not saying that play would be passé, but it's evolved so much in the culture. So Students are writing about different things. We're reading different plays as examples. But I pretty much have stuck all the way through because of my own studies in playwriting and my own learning, as a professional playwright and going to see so many plays, hundreds and hundreds of plays, what works and what doesn't. And that's what I like to share with my students, both my professional realm and my craft realm. I mean, besides just my master's degree, I've taken many, many different classes from playwrights in, how to write plays.
So theater has changed, entertainment has changed, and certainly the people that are in the industry has changed over the course of many years, even in just the last few years. And so over the 25 years that you've been teaching playwriting at Oakland University, how has your approach then had to be modified to, A, the changing paradigms in show business and how that context provides guidance for the future of playwriting, but also for the changes in how students learn and how ultimately this next generation of writers are going to be approaching their craft?
Yes. Well, again, I really like to stress the model of structure because a lot of kids come in and think, oh, I can be very abstract and I like to be mysterious and I don't want to pander to the audience. And they don't realize it's not pandering to make it clear what you're talking about. So again, structure, character, dialogue, making sure characters are relatable, that one can follow the dialogue. And what we do in class is replicate the process that professional playwrights go through, which is after they've written a first draft, the playwright casts the play within the class, and we read it out loud, and then discuss what is working, and then what needs to be fixed in a rewrite. And then they go back and rewrite, because it is so different from short story or novel where you just read the play silently. You don't know until you read a play aloud, because that's how it's intended to be presented, what's working or not. You find out, oh, that was funny, or I thought it was funny, but then it isn't funny when we read it, or that didn't land. I thought I was communicating that, but something is missing, and then you find you have to add something, or you need more exposition because you didn't realize the couple was married, or they, whatever. So you learn your reading aloud in the class is like your biggest rewrite tool, because that tells you what you need to attend to in your rewrite.
Yeah, collaboration is so important in any form of entertainment, really in any industry, especially in today's world. And so having that opportunity to go through those rewrites, to get that vision of yours out there and have other people look it over, but also to, as you said, visualize the writing as it's meant to be delivered, and that's a good guidance for rewriting and for further building your story. We're joined by Kitty Dubin, award-winning playwright and lecturer at Oakland University in theater and playwriting, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. This is really interesting, and it's close to my heart because it has parallels to something I participated in when I was in college at Michigan State, between their communications department and their theater department. It was a project called Theater to Film, where students would write a screenplay that would then be converted into a stage play, or vice versa, and it would be produced both as a stage play and then shot as a feature film, and later would be then showed at the Traverse City Film Festival. Very similar thing has happened over at Oakland University that you've been involved with. You and the late Professor Tom Suda, who was teaching directing, came together to present a showcase where directing students would work with playwriting students to collaborate and produce a play together. Can you talk about your collaboration with Tom Suda in creating this program, and then the impact of a program like this on the education of theater students really across the board, wherever area of interest in the theater that they're looking to go into?
Well, yeah, since I've been teaching there, I have always been on the lookout for places where these plays that my students are writing can be performed in front of an audience. I mean, it's one thing to read it in the class, it's another thing to be in front of an audience. And just besides Oakland, my students have had plays in many, many festivals all throughout Michigan theaters and beyond. But at Oakland, I approached Tom Suda because he was teaching the directing class. And, you know, each director was always directing a play from a book of plays. And I said, why don't your directing students, each one direct one of my student-written plays? So we did that for a few semesters, and then Professor Suda passed away, and then I looked around again, and this past year I did the same thing with Professor David Graham, where and what was great about that is his directing students were showcased, my playwriting students were showcased, and the Oakland actors were showcased. And I cannot tell you what a thrill it is when you are starting to write plays and you have one performed in front of an audience and you get the response that you intended to have.
Yeah, and it's great opportunities, too, for these students to collaborate and to build those partnerships, build those relationships with who will be their colleagues in their profession in theater, because there was a saying that I was told when I was in school at Michigan State, when working mostly on the film side of things, that it's a big world, but it's a small world. And I think that applies to anywhere in entertainment. Having those opportunities to build those relationships, I mean, those can be great partnerships, or at the very least, help you hone your skills in one area that may be lacking or may need some improvement while you're helping somebody else. And that kind of collaboration, you speak to how important that is really to bolstering the education and the purpose of classes like yours and classes like David Graham's and the late Tom Suda's in building this next generation of theater professionals.
Totally. And it's a wonderful, it's like, there is none of that, like when we have our discussion, our feedback sessions about the plays. I've never had anyone be snarky or mean. They are extremely generous in their praise when it is warranted, and they are also very honest and direct when they find something that isn't clear or needs to be bolstered or whatever. And it's really like a supportive little creative village of souls. Really, everybody's sort of rooting for each other to be able to produce their best work.
We're joined by Kitty Dubin, an award-winning playwright and a lecturer at Oakland University in theater and in playwriting, joining us on the Megacast. And so you have had a long career in playwriting. You've met a lot of people over the years and taught a lot of people over the years that are professionals in theater and are professional playwrights themselves. For those that may not be Oakland University students or may not be able to take your class but are interested in playwriting, do have a passion for playwriting, want to be a playwright themselves, what is your lasting advice for those people as they look to start their playwriting journey and maybe even build a career in theater playwriting?
They have to learn what the form is first. I mean, I know a few people actually in town who were screenwriters or prose writers, and they wrote a play, and these are really good writers, and they sent them to me for feedback. And what was shocking to me is here they are, professional writers, but they weren't plays. So the first thing is they really have to know how a play differs from other forms of writing. And I always give my students a bibliography. There are not a million, but there are quite a few good playwriting books that, delineate what you have to have and what elements have to be in a play and how it differs. So I would say to anyone, either take a class or at least read a book so you actually know what a play should be. because I know a lot of theaters get submissions and they're just not plays, and they're going to be tossed out before the first paragraph's read.
Kitty, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you did. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council.
As partners, working together to protect our water resources, we agree.
Pet waste is the source of harmful bacteria in the Huron River.
When it's left on the ground, it can wash into the storm drains.
These lead directly to our streams. No filters, no treatment.
Here's one thing we know that can help keep our water clean.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
So pick up pet waste and trash it.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Joining us now is Oakland County Executive David Coulter, who recently made his State of the County address. Executive, thank you for being with us this morning.
Tyler, always great to be with you. Thanks.
Appreciate having you on. So can you touch on some of the highlights of the topics that you emphasized last night at the State of the County address? It was the night before the date that we are recording this, and that this is live on the Oakland County Megacast. And obviously it's been another complicated year here in Oakland County. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of different factors to consider. What are some of the highlights that you went over last night at your State of the County address?
Yeah, thanks. You know, what I really tried to do is lay out sort of a 5-year roadmap for the future. What does Oakland County really need to make sure that it's paying attention to, leaning into, investing in over the next 5 years to make sure that we remain a competitive and great place to live? And so, you know, some of those buckets include a strong economy, right? We know that Oakland County is a good place economically. You can get a good job here. But are we doing enough for our small businesses? So I touched on that. Safe and healthy communities. That's safe and healthy people, I should say. And we know how important that is. Our health, but also our communities being safe places. And we talked about that. And then finally, I kind of have this last bucket that I would just say, letting people live their best lives. The kinds of things like parks and trails and workforce development that really help make this an exceptional county to be. So I laid out this 5-year plan, and just as importantly, I want to say this. I want to hold us accountable. We have goals and we have measures, and we're going to have data around these plans. And now, as of now, you can go to our website at oakgov.com, and all of these goals will be there, and the measures will be there. So you can hold us accountable to achieving the things that I talked about last night.
We're joined by Oakland County Executive David Coulter on the Megacast. More information on their website, oakgov.com. And so a big factor in all of this over the last couple of years has been COVID-19. And it looks like we're in a much more relaxed place now, and things are looking up for the first time in a long time as we've been dealing with this pandemic. But COVID-19 is not going away just yet. So at this moment in time in Oakland County, what's been the conversation between your office, between the board, and of course between the Oakland County Health Division and its approach to continuing to protect the community and advise the community on what is happening on the COVID-19 front, while also understanding that uncertainty should be playing a factor into plans for the future?
Yeah, it's a great question because, as you put it so well, you know, COVID is not over, but as the numbers indicate, as the transmission rate indicates, we are at a different place now. Our transmission rate now is considered low by CDC standards, which is what we've used from the beginning. They've modified those standards somewhat, but we are at a low transmission rate. And so that allows us to do more free things. We don't have the mask requirement in schools right now or in indoor settings. So the transmission rates have guided this. We've tried to follow the science as best we could from the beginning of this. As you indicate, there could be spikes. Our health department is always monitoring this on a daily basis. And we're also talking to our health system, our hospitals, to see what's happening there. So the good news is we are at a different place, and that's what made me feel comfortable giving sort of a more of a forward-looking 5-year outlook versus just talking about how we're going to get through, the pandemic and the terrible things, that has wreaked on us. So I do think we're in a very different place, but well said. We may have to reinstitute measures at some point, depending on what the virus forces us to do.
And you mentioned refocusing goals for the county going forward in that 5-year plan, some of those benchmarks, some of the ways that you and by you I mean the county is aiming to accomplish those goals. Something else to refocus on after COVID-19, or as we begin to find our way maybe out of the COVID-19 pandemic, is the role of public health in our communities. Because in the past it's been, of course, preventing spread of the disease, whether it's West Nile virus outbreaks, or if it's the seasonal flu or common cold or some other disease that may be coming through the community. That's kind of been that role. But we've seen over the course of the pandemic, not just COVID-19, but other conditions that have previously been kind of pushed to the side, such as mental health, being something that's considered much more critical to the public health now in the context of what we've been through with COVID-19. How does that help to inform both your office and the Oakland County Health Division in refocusing its goals going forward?
You bring up a great point. Mental health was a problem before COVID. Not enough people had access. But it's a crisis now. And I've often said that if there's a silver lining to COVID, maybe there's a couple, but one of them is that the stigma around mental health has gone down. It used to be that people were reluctant to get help because they didn't want to be identified as somebody that needed help. But frankly, what we've seen in COVID, anybody can have a mental health issue just like you get a physical health issue. You can be rich or poor, black or white, live in the city or the suburb. It hits everybody. And so one of the things I talked about during this speech is that we're investing $13 million of our American Rescue Plan dollars on mental health services. So that's going to cover our nonprofits in the county, so that if you're a resident and you need access to mental health services, I encourage you to reach out, and we're going to be able to meet another 66,000 people's needs in Oakland County. But we're also going to invest in our students in school, and we're going to invest in our hospitals so that the people that have a mental health crisis and show up in the ER can get help when they get there. So we're leaning in and trying to address the need. But I want to encourage all your listeners, anyone can get it. And if you feel like you have any kind of issues, it's just like a physical health issue. Get it taken care of.
We're joined by Oakland County Executive David Coulter on the Oakland County Megacast. More information on their website, oakgov.com, for more information on county programs and plans going forward, and of course to review and watch for yourself the State of the County address that Executive Coulter made earlier on the week of this recording, on this live broadcast. Again, we're joined by Oakland County Executive David Coulter on the Oakland County Megacast. Another driving force in the future plans of Oakland County is, of course, on the business end of things. We've seen our commercial businesses, our retail businesses really across the board have also taken a large hit during the COVID-19 pandemic. But we're also seeing there is this sort of drive for industry here in Oakland County and in southeastern Michigan, really across the state, from a variety of different industries, including the automotive industry, really investing in electric vehicle production here in Michigan and here in Oakland County. How much of a role does that play? Does that investment by many different companies, including General Motors here locally, play into Oakland County's plans going into the future?
Yeah, I started my speech by driving into the auditorium in a Chevy Bolt that's made at the Orient Assembly Plant, the GM plant, to highlight the fact that, GM made a $4 billion investment there, the largest investment they've ever made in the history of their company, and the largest private investment ever made in Oakland County. So it was a huge thing, and I think it reaffirms that Michigan is a competitive place in the EV market and that we can compete and win in this space. But what I also talked about in my speech is this: those kinds of big wins are wonderful and we celebrate them when we get them. But most businesses in Oakland County are small businesses, 50 people or less. And that's where we really have to make sure that we're leaning in and giving the resources that they need. You know, over the last couple of years, we've given 15,000 of them support through the county through grants and toolkits and the like. But going forward, we're going to really lean in on those small businesses. We created a new team, and I announced this at the speech, called Business Forward. And these are 9 business consultants who are not going to work in the office, but are going to work directly in the communities with small businesses, helping make sure that they have the resources, the support, the grant writing, whatever it is that they need to be successful, they can help our small businesses, because that's really the backbone of our economy here in Oakland County.
Especially as we add more industry to Oakland County, another thought that comes up, another topic that comes to mind is sustainability. That's been a significant buzzword in politics, in industry, in government for a number of years as we attempt to maintain a certain quality of life in our society, but also balance that with the need to protect the environment so that we are able to live that quality of life for a significant amount of time. Later this hour, we'll be joined by Dr. Majgan Raji from Oakland University, who's part of the leadership team from their university sustainability plan. Can you talk about the partnership between the county and Oakland University on sustainability in Oakland County and making plans to accelerate into the future, but do so in a way that is thoughtful, that is considerate, and that is prudent to maintaining our environment?
Yeah, I'm so glad he's going to be your guest. He's smarter about this than I am. The great folks at Oakland University are really leaning into this space and really have become recognized leaders in this space of sustainability at the higher ed level. And we're, I think, really blessed to have Oakland University in this county. And so I announced at my speech a brand new partnership with Oakland University, where they're going to help us do the data and the research and the strategic planning around environmental sustainability. And I can't thank them enough for their help, because, as you said, this is a critical, a moral issue, frankly. If we can do all the other things right, and if we don't figure out how to protect the health of this planet so that we survive as a species, it's all going to be for naught. So I think we have a responsibility to ourselves and our future generations to make sure that we're working in this space as well as we can.
We're joined by Oakland County Executive David Coulter on the Oakland County Megacast. More information from Oakland County, including everything you need to know about the State of the County address that occurred earlier earlier on in this week, that we are both broadcasting live and recording this particular interview on their website, oakgov.com, for more information. oakgov.com to learn more. And so we have a significant Ukrainian population here in southeastern Michigan, really across the state of Michigan, and here in Oakland County. Especially, obviously, our thoughts are with those in Ukraine and those of Ukrainian descent with Ukrainian friends and family who are affected by the barbaric Russian invasion of Ukraine. Knowing that we have such a significant Ukrainian American population and so many that have family and friends or others in their life that are over in Ukraine, what sort of support, either to resources or assisting in directing to resources, is maybe provided through Oakland County to residents who may want to help those in Ukraine as they're dealing with this crisis?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's so devastating what's happening there. The Russian invasion is just unbelievably unacceptable, and I think a lot of us thought we would not see something like that in our lifetime. And as you mentioned, we have a significant Ukrainian American population in this county and in this region, and it was important for me as a leader to stand up and support the democracy that they're fighting so hard to protect. I went to a Ukrainian prayer vigil in Southfield, where there's a Ukrainian church there. It was beautiful. I went there with my friend Andrei Duzhi, who's a leader in the Ukrainian community that I've known for many, many years. I was really proud of the fact that we lit up our county building in the blue and gold of the Ukrainian flag to show support for those folks. And as you said, we're also working to get resources as we can and to help coordinate that for our residents to donate. I would also encourage you, because there's been some bad actors in this field, that if you go to the attorney, and I've talked to the Attorney General about this because she's very concerned, as always, unfortunately, there's bad characters that try to make money off of these sort of tragedies, which which is disgusting to me. But if you go to her website, the Attorney General's website, she's also tracking who not to give money to, who to give and to not give money to. So I encourage your folks to do them. And then just otherwise, if you're a praying person, to hold the folks in Ukraine in your prayers and thoughts, because they need all of our strength right now.
Yeah, we had a couple of interviews recently, too, with more information on how you can determine legitimate actors in relief for Ukraine. We had Sam Rosenberg on yesterday, who's a co-founder of Share Detroit, and they just created a new effort, Share Ukraine, at shareukraine.org. And we had Melanie Ducanel from the Michigan Better Business Bureau on with us recently, also talking about those charity scams really early on in the crisis over in Ukraine. So all those good resources, those are on civiccentertv.com/Megacast, where you can view both of those interviews. And of course, the Attorney General's office, always helpful in their information on avoiding scams. We're joined by Oakland County Executive David Coulter on the Oakland County Megacast. Last week, related to the Attorney General's office, you were part of a press conference with the Attorney General, with Dana Nessel, as well as Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard, talking about a $26 billion opioid settlement with the nation's three major pharmaceutical distributors, Cardinal, McKesson, and AmerisourceBergen, as well as Johnson & Johnson. Can you talk about the settlement, how it affects Oakland County, and more particularly, how it affects providing the services and providing the aid that's needed to those that have been affected by the opioid crisis right here in Oakland County?
Yeah, and it is a crisis. There's no question. I think we've all seen that overdoses and deaths are up, in particular because of fentanyl, which is just so much more deadly, and that these opioids have been overprescribed and oversold by these pharmaceuticals. They were wrong, and they got caught for it, and they should have got caught for it, and they have been penalized significantly. And Oakland County is one of the counties that's joined the lawsuit early on, back in 2016, I believe, before I was executive, but I supported it. We did the same when I was mayor of Ferndale, because it's important that we hold these companies responsible for the devastating effects. And we've all seen them. We've seen it in our family. We've seen the addiction that's happened. And so we're going to get a sizable portion of that money, but we're going to get it over 10 years. So it's going to be about $1.5 million a year for the next 10 years. And as promised in the settlement, we'll use every dime of that money to go into drug-related programs, whether it's prevention programs, treatment programs. I'm working with my health director right now to figure out exactly the best way to spend that money. We haven't got it yet, but every nickel of that will go into helping give families and individuals relief from this awful epidemic that we're faced with.
Executive Coulter, just another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else at this time that would be important for Oakland County residents to keep in mind in terms of county programs, or things that are on the docket that people should be looking forward to and keeping themselves informed on here in Oakland County?
Well, you did a great job of hitting on the main theme, so I really appreciate it. Maybe the last thing I'll throw in is, and I shared this in the State of the County, we've all seen how important our parks are. Sometimes we forget about them or forget the importance of them, but I think in COVID we all found out how important it was to get outside, get some fresh air, connect with nature, reconnect with ourselves. And one of the things I talked about last night is, one of the assets in Oakland County is that we have 138 miles of trails, which are amazing, but my goal, and I stated it at the speech, is to get us to 400 miles. I think I'd love to see a web of trails throughout our communities, throughout our counties, and in the region, so that we can bike ride and ride, walk and whatever else we want to do to get out into nature. So our green spaces continue to be an important asset in Oakland County.
Executive, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to see you as always.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line, for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sofia and Gabriel, even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
72.7% of high school students get less than the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. This can cause pain, obesity, and can very negatively affect your mental health. When you have a consistent 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day, you get sick less often, lose more weight, and have better relationships with those around you. For more information about the dangers of sleep deprivation, go to sleepfoundation.org. This message is brought to you by the WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
It's the Great Lakes water. And so what people do ends up in our waterways.
Flushable wipes are just evil. They should be thrown away. They're impossible to destroy, and they can cause significant problems.
One of the main things when you're cooking is to not dump fats, oils, and greases down your drains.
They stick to the sides of pipes. They stick to everything they come in contact with. Don't put it down the sink.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Neighborhood storm drains carry water directly to local creeks and streams. No filters, no treatment.
Storm drains also help reduce street flooding when it rains.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
It is easy to do your part by adopting a storm drain.
Find a storm drain, check it, and clear it every month.
So keep storm drains for rain only.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome to the Michigan Megacast on your radio homes for the program 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and live to tape on 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills on Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information about our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV, who joins us only from 11 o'clock to 12 noon. The Great Lakes are known for great big ships. Now, take a look at those ships at a little closer and a little more little with Maritime Miniatures at the Dossin Great Lakes Museum. Joining us now to talk about the exhibit is Assistant Curator for the Dossin Great Lakes Museum and the Detroit Historical Society, Bill Pringle. Bill, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Tyler. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you on with us. So first off, can you tell us about the Dossin Great Lakes Museum? For those that may not be familiar, they may be familiar with the Detroit Historical Society or other local historical societies and the work that they do, but what can people find during normal times at the Dossin Great Lakes Museum?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Detroit Historical Society, we operate both the Detroit Historical Museum in Midtown Detroit, there on Woodward. We also operate the Dossin Great Lakes Museum on Belle Isle. So at both of those museums, you're going to find a lot of great exhibits talking about Detroit history. At the Detroit Historical Museum, where we've got a lot of great permanent exhibits and great changing exhibits as well. And then, of course, at the Dossin Museum on Belle Isle, that's going to be mostly focused on maritime history, specifically the Great Lakes and the Detroit River region. And we're actually right now celebrating our centennial, the Detroit Historical Society. We were founded 100 years ago. And because of that, we're doing a lot of special stuff, a lot of special exhibits, programs, and that sort of thing.
And so now through May 8th, you're holding a special exhibition entitled Maritime Miniatures, The Art of the Ship Model. Talk to us about that exhibit and what people can explore when they visit this. Because not only is this exploring classic ships and historically significant ships, but also model ship making as well.
Yeah, that's right. So since this is our centennial and we're holding these special exhibits, the ship models in our collection have a really special place in the DNA of the Historical Society. So way back, the original Maritime Museum in Detroit was on board an actual ship, the JT Wing. It was the Museum of Great Lakes History. And back then when they were on that ship, the original curator, he put together a group known as the Great Lakes Model Shipbuilders Guild, who were tasked with creating model ships, Great Lakes specific model ships. Most of them in the same scale, 1/8 scale, to give visitors a sense of what those ships may have looked like if they were next to each other, to help put that in perspective. But since way back then, when the museum opened in 1949, we have been collecting this series of model ships. And they have proven to be one of the most popular sections in our collection. We get people asking all the time, oh, we want to see the model ships. We want to see more model ships. So we thought, with this being our centennial, this was a great opportunity to put as many of those on display as possible. So we're considering this absolutely a special exhibit because at the Dossin, we generally have one space in the museum that hosts rotating exhibitions. The reason Maritime Miniatures is special is because not only is it occupying that main changing exhibition space, but these models are spread throughout the entire museum. So it's really a total takeover in an effort to get out of storage as many models as possible, and to tell a lot of these stories that are behind the models themselves and the ships depicted in model form. And so because of that, it really is a special exhibition for us. So throughout our main exhibits, as soon as you come in the front door, you're going to start seeing ship models of lots of different sizes, lots of different forms, different types of ships, passenger ships, bulk freight carriers, that sort of thing. You're going to see them throughout the museum in places where you wouldn't see them before.
We're joined by Bill Pringle, the assistant curator at the Detroit Historical Society, as well as the Dossin Great Lakes Museum located on Belle Isle in Detroit. Joining us on the Michigan Megacast, there are many infamous ships and vessels that have traveled the Great Lakes over the course of recorded history. What will be some of those infamous ships that will be having models at the Dossin Great Lakes Museum during this Maritime Miniatures exhibit?
Sure. There are plenty of famous ships that have sailed around the Great Lakes in the long history that we've been taking to the waters here. Of course, some of the ones that you may recognize, some of them are on permanent display, but of course there's the Edmund Fitzgerald. That's recognizable to a lot of folks. We have French explorer LaSalle's Griffin ship, one of the earliest ships on the Great Lakes. But of course, with close to 150 different models now on display, there's a lot to pick from. I can go through some of my favorites that are on display right now. One of my favorites, maybe my absolute favorite in the collection, is a model of a passenger steamship called the Mayflower. The reason it's one of my favorites is because it's actually the oldest model ship in our collection. It was built in 1854. So it's over 160 years old. And it's relatively big too. And it's special not only because it's so old and it's survived this long and gives us a great look into how the ship looked at the time, because it was built at the time the ship was actually sailing, but also because the model ship was entered into competition at the Michigan State Fair, where it actually won a prize. And the model builder actually attached the medallion that he won as a prize to the front deck of the ship, which I think is a really neat additional piece of history for not only that model, but the ship as well. And for many of the models on display, in the exhibit, you're going to be learning about not only the model and the model maker, but the hidden background behind a lot of these ships as well. Another one close to the Mayflower on display is a ship called the Christopher Columbus. Now, this was what was known as a whaleback ship. This is a relatively short-lived Great Lakes innovation. The hull shape looks like a whale's back, as you might have guessed. But this was one of the only passenger-carrying whaleback ships on the Great Lakes. And it's particularly special because it was built to carry passengers from downtown Chicago to the fairgrounds for the famous Chicago World's Fair in 1893. And it took thousands, some estimates say millions of passengers between Chicago and the fairgrounds. So that's a really interesting one as well. And just to highlight one more, I guess, we have another called the Philo Parsons, which was another passenger steamer. I guess I like passenger steamers. That was active mostly on Lake Erie. And this one was part of a Confederate plot during the Civil War to gain a presence in the Great Lakes. It was actually taken over by Confederate soldiers as a means to free some prisoners from a prison camp near Sandusky. And then they would go on to, attack ports around the Great Lakes and that sort of thing. But their plot was actually, they gave it up as they had learned that they suspected that the Union troops on Lake Erie had learned of their plot, which they had. So they abandoned it and snuck back through to where they boarded, which was in Canada. So many interesting stories in these models and the ships themselves. So, and like you said, we go into how models are built as well. There's a lot of different ways to build models, from the beginner cracking open a kit, which will help walk them through each step of the way, and from the more complicated methods. I think it's interesting personally that a lot of model ships are built in roughly the same way actual wooden ships were built, which is that sort of keel bulkhead frame and then wood planking over the sides of it, just scaled down quite a bit. So there's a lot going on in this exhibit, and I think folks that have been able to visit so far have come away learning a lot.
We're joined by Bill Pringle, the assistant curator at the Detroit Historical Society, as well as the Dossin Great Lakes Museum, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. So a lot of these ships had sailed their regular life, had been retired, and then were, of course, cemented in maritime history in Michigan, and now they're going to be on display as model ships at the Dossin Great Lakes Museum during the Maritime Miniatures exhibit. Others, unfortunately, sank. Some of them were found, some of them were not found. Were some of those that were not found also going to be featured so people can see kind of what these vessels looked like during their operational time before the tragic loss of these vessels?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the first curator would often say that this was a fleet of ghost ships, this fleet of his model ships, because, while they're not necessarily around anymore, we still get to see them and learn from them, learn about the way they worked, the way they did business, what innovations they brought to the table and changed shipping in the Great Lakes, both for freight and passenger. But my mind immediately goes to the model we have of the Griffin that I mentioned earlier. We actually aren't completely sure what that ship looked like, because there weren't really any plans to draw from, and the wreckage was never found. So the model we have in our collection is based on several assumptions of what those ships may have looked like at the time. So that's what my mind immediately jumps to when we talk about lost ships, particularly ghost ships. I think the other side of the coin is interesting too, because some of the ore carriers, the freighters that we have on display, are actually still working ships right now. You can see them going up and down the river and around the Great Lakes. So we really have both ends of that spectrum on display right now.
We're joined by Bill Pringle, the assistant curator at the Detroit Historical Society, as well as the Dossin Great Lakes Museum. Bill, another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else at this time that would be interesting for our audience to know about the Dossin Great Lakes Museum, about work being done through the Detroit Historical Society, or other programs and exhibits that may be of interest coming up?
Sure. One thing that I would really like to stress is the extremely fragile nature of these model ships. And as such, as part of this special exhibition, we're actually admitting folks with a $5 donation, which is something a little bit different for us. But because of that support that we are getting through those donations, we are going to be able to put those funds directly towards restoring some of the damaged ships, paying for that continued upkeep that's so necessary, and also for keeping them safe in storage, new enclosures and that sort of thing. Because even when properly stored and cared for, these models, time can really take their toll. And all it can take is one little nudge to break something. And of course, these have been in our collection for a long, long time. And so while the majority of them are in really great condition, we would love to see some of them restored to closer what they would have looked like when they were completed by their model builder. And so during this run, this special run, we really appreciate that support from our visitors in that small donation, as that's going to be going directly to helping those artifacts that are on display. So again, I appreciate folks visiting, making that contribution towards this cause.
Bill, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler.
Appreciate it. We've been joined by Bill Pringle, the assistant curator at the Detroit Historical Society, as well as the Dossin Great Lakes Museum. Beginning on May 8th will be Maritime Miniatures that will begin, goes now through May 8th of 2022. Maritime Miniatures at the Dossin Great Lakes Museum. We're going to take a break here on the Michigan Megacast. On the other side, we will be headed to West Bloomfield Township, where a group of environmental activists has come together in support of the environment as a major development is set to begin soon. They have some issues with that development, and they want to bring that to the negotiating table with those that are hoping to build a mental health facility in one of the local hospital systems in West Bloomfield. That's coming up next. This is the Michigan Megacast.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
We as Michiganders feel connected to this resource in a way that I think is really powerful.
Conservation starts with a caring, committed community.
For me, it's peaceful to have a relationship with the river.
Every single one of us has a role to make sure that those waterways stay safe and healthy, being careful about what goes down the storm drain.
Just even eliminating some of your single-use plastic makes a difference.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
know that nearly 3.31 million Americans don't get their annual checkup? Going to the doctor regularly is extremely important and is a crucial factor in maintaining good health. Make sure you are visiting your local doctor often and telling them about any health concerns you have. For more information, contact your local healthcare provider. This message is brought to you by WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Parents do a lot of worrying. Get your kids caught up on childhood vaccines to protect them from these 14 preventable diseases, and you'll have 14 fewer things to worry about. Vaccines are safe and effective and save lives. So let's get caught up on vaccines and worry about something else. Get the facts at ivaccinate.org.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Most of the pollution that goes into our rivers is carried by rainwater that flows off of roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
The leaves and bark of a single tree can retain a surprising amount of rainwater. Depending on its size and species, it could be 100 gallons or more.
It is estimated that an urban forest can reduce annual runoff by up to 7%.
Here's one thing that we know can help keep our water clean.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Michigan Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. To learn more about the program at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information about our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV, otherwise known as My. Now we'll head over to West Bloomfield Township, where a group of environmental activists has come together in support of the trees and the wildlife in town, as a major hospital system is planning a large development on ecologically valuable land. The hospital says it's done its part to mitigate environmental factors. The group, Earth, out of West Bloomfield, disagrees. Joining us now is the co-founder of the group, Sally Wenczel, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. Sally, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Tyler. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So let's begin. Give us a little bit of background on how this all started, how the group came together, what this case is that is being discussed within West Bloomfield Township. Of course, it's gone through the Environmental Commission in West Bloomfield that recommended against many of the proposed plans, particularly the clear cutting of certain trees on the property at Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, and then also went through the Planning Commission, which made a contradictory decision to that recommendation made by the Environmental Commission. Can you give us some insight into this case, and then where your group tends to disagree with the decisions that were made by the West Bloomfield Township Planning Commission and the plans that have been proposed by Henry Ford Health System?
Correct. You summarized it well. And unfortunately, it has come a long way. It's really, the ball is in Henry Ford's court at this point. But the spark that really ignited the formation of EARTH, which is the name of our group, EARTH standing for Environmental Activists Rallying Together to Help, West Bloomfield. We had to come up with a name pretty quickly because the group grew very quickly. As of last night, we have 49 members. And this is just on Facebook. However, we'd like to meet in person soon, and it's just growing. We're going to do more activities in the future. But yes, the spark was Tony Spikajny's resignation in protest of the Environmental Commission being overruled for the first time in its history. The recommendation of the Environmental Commission for a woodlands ruling was overruled, and he resigned in protest. And we thought, a few of us thought that spoke very loudly that something's wrong, something needs to be done. We started chatting on Facebook, and it's difficult in such an open forum. We decided to narrow down our forum to this group site called EARTH, where we all had more common goals and less trolls getting in the conversation. So here we are. We are EARTH, and we are promoting sustainability. I wrote a few things down here. And what is sustainability? It's meeting the needs of existing people without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Sustainability is social, economic, and ecological. So it crosses all borders of a community. It should be binding a community together. And my message today is about unity. I'm bringing a peaceful message today about the fact that we do need to unify with common goals in this community. And I think that is the overall message of EARTH as well.
Yeah, and so there was an article earlier this week in the Detroit News that highlighted this group's formation and gave some insight and gave some background information into the case that's proposed, the development proposed by Henry Ford Health System for a mental health facility on the campus of Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, where that case has been so far, the group's opposition, and more. And it very much does seem from that context and from hearing from you and just from knowing some of the people that are involved in this, because full disclosure to those that are watching the Michigan Megacast throughout our network, Civic Center TV does broadcast all the Environmental Commission and Planning Commission meetings in West Bloomfield Township, and we do very commonly see a lot of these similar people that made these decisions. We see all these decisions being made. We see all the deliberation. And so that should be known as I'm discussing this with Sally, that we know the people that are involved in this. And so we also see from all that context, from all that information, from your group and from the discussion so far, that there is an antagonism there. There is a disagreement on the execution of this plan. Nobody is necessarily saying that a mental health facility is not something that would be beneficial to West Bloomfield Township, beneficial to the local area. It's the way that that's being executed is proposed to be executed that your group disagrees against. What are those disagreements? Where are those points, particularly with this plan, that are considered extremely detrimental to those involved in your group?
Correct. Yes, we are not opposed to a mental health facility. We are opposed to the way it's being executed and the footprint in which it will take up the location, the exact location. And from my understanding, speaking with representatives of the Environmental Commission, excuse me, there were other options. And we mentioned that in our letter that we composed as a group and sent to every single board member, or the ones we could find emails for, on Henry Ford Health System's Board of Trustees. And just want to get the wording exact here, that there were other options throughout this process in the timeline. Other options were discussed and other options were shoved aside as far as location. And those were presented to representatives of Henry Ford. And there were a lot of eyes on this project. There were a lot of eyes early on that could have pushed for these other ecologically friendly options rather than wiping out what looks like about 18 acres of mature forest, a mature ecosystem. This is an ecosystem, this forest with trees up to 200 years old, according to Derek Stradalek, the township forester. And where's this? I wanted to quote him from the article in the Detroit News. Derek Stradalek, this is our township forester. Pretty cool. We have a forester that works for the township, a scientist that specializes in this stuff. He said he's rarely encountered trees of this nature and character really anywhere in southeastern Michigan. And that's a pretty strong statement. So that, I don't know if when pen hit paper in the initial design phase, did the architect, did the designer have that woodlands ordinance in hand? Did they know what was about to be violated? This is a long-standing woodlands ordinance. It's been in place for 30 plus years. And it's really, I think, the backbone of this community, both the woodlands and the wetlands ordinances. This is why people move here, for environment, for nature. I'm digressing a bit now. I hope I answered your question, but yes, there were other options, and we would like, at this point, since the ball is in Henry Ford's court, we would like them to open their hearts. Jane Goodall says you have to reach people's hearts. You know, all the technical, all the jargon, but you really have to get right here to get people to change their minds, to look at the long-term impact and long-term effects of what's going on here. This is not just a forest, this is a global forest. We share all of these resources. You know, nature really doesn't have boundaries. We own things, but we really don't, because we're all impacted. Just like that ad you had on a minute ago, we all share the same water. It's all, watersheds have no boundaries. Everything we do impacts our neighbor. Everything I do impacts the person next to me. So we're looking for Henry Ford to step up and really look at the impact on this community and be a good community player here, a team player.
We're joined by Sally Wenczel, co-founder of the activist group Earth West Bloomfield, joining us on the Michigan Megacast, talking about a development that's been proposed and approved in West Bloomfield Township to construct a mental health facility on the campus of Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. I want to give you, the viewers and the listeners, an opportunity for some context that you can soak in yourself from these cases. All of the minutes from these meetings, the agendas from these meetings, are available on wbtownship.org. Our flagship station, Civic Center TV, broadcasts all these meetings. You can watch each of these meetings, their full deliberation in the public record, on demand on our website at civiccentertv.com. If you navigate over to our on-demand page and to meetings, the exact website, civiccentertv.com/category/meetings. And for context, the special meeting in which the Environmental Commission gave its opinions on this case, November 10th, 2021. The Planning Commission, November 23rd, 2021, and then a reconsideration on January 25th, 2022. Again, those minutes and agendas from those meetings available on wbtownship.org, the West Bloomfield Township website. Meeting video on demand available to the public on civiccentertv.com/categories/meetings. We're joined by Sally Wenczel from Earth West Bloomfield, joining us on the Megacast, an activist group that is opposing the wetland and woodland impacts that this proposed project may have on the local environment. And so, what ultimately is the goal of your organization in this effort to not curb this project, but to modify this project, to reconsider the execution of this project? Should communication, should a dialogue be conducted between your group, Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, Henry Ford Health System, and West Bloomfield Township? Where does this group want that to go?
All right. Yes, it's time. It's going to take time. We're asking for a redraw. Look at your plans and look at the options that were set forth, the recommendation by the Environmental Commission, which was overlooked, to move the footprint of the proposed project. We're looking for, you're going to have to reapply for your permits. We know it takes time. I've been there. I've done projects where you submit your plans. It's reviewed by the township engineer. It takes time. It comes back. Then you have to, fix this and submit a permit to Eagle. And then you have to, there's so much that goes on in a project. It takes a lot of time. And I think time is of the essence here for Henry Ford. They want to get this going. Of course, they've done a lot of work. It takes time. People have been paid to do this work. I understand. However, look at 200 years, okay? 200 years, these trees, this forest has been growing, and we're looking at a few more months of work here. I mean, if you're looking at the big picture, this effort, this redraw, this resubmission that we're looking for Henry Ford to execute is not that much time in the grand scheme of the big impact that this facility is going to have on that forest.
So based on the evidence that your group has collected itself, based on the testimony of those involved in the discussion of this project from West Bloomfield Township, that being the environmental consultant Derek Stradilek, the environmental manager John Royer, and then from the Planning Commission it would have been either Gordon Bodell, the building director, and the zoning and planning manager for West Bloomfield Township, or Caitlin Hines, who also works in the zoning department, that often are discussing and providing information, just the base information, and answering basic questions of the board, and then of course these commissions. Based on all of that information, what is the belief of this group, of your group of Earth West Bloomfield, of just how severe the impact on the environment could be in the plans that are currently proposed and have currently been approved by the Planning Commission in West Bloomfield?
Okay, well, look at Google Earth. Look at a sky shot of West Bloomfield Township. There really isn't much forest left. We think we have a lot because when you are coming from downtown Detroit and spending an afternoon in the city and it's concrete everywhere, and you come out here, you think, wow, there's so many trees, but there really aren't. We have the West Bloomfield Woods Nature Preserve, the preserve behind the Township Hall, all the hiking trails back there. We have some other forested areas, but we really don't have a lot left. And the fact that we're slowly chipping away at this very valuable piece of ecosystem, this valuable woodlands, is frightening to me. I think it's a slippery slope. Yes, there were a lot of people involved in passing this through, and I think there might have been some pressure on the township because what Henry Ford is doing is technically not illegal. Right. It's not illegal. This is a matter of character, being a good neighbor, and integrity. And this is a matter of addressing the fact that our environmental ordinance, the integrity of our environmental ordinance was undermined. And it's been long-standing for 30 years. And I think our group is looking to bring that integrity back by looking at this project again, redrawing it so that the footprint doesn't wipe out 18 acres of mature forest.
We're joined by Sally Wenczel. Oh, please.
Save the trees. Save the trees.
We're joined by Sally Wenczel, co-founder of Earth West Bloomfield, an environmental activism group that has formed in West Bloomfield Township in reaction to the proposed plans for a mental health facility to be constructed on the campus of Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, located just on Maple Road off of Drake Road in West Bloomfield Township in Oakland County. Joining us on the Megacast again, all the information on this case from public meetings through West Bloomfield Township are available on wbtownship.org with archived video of these meetings at civiccentertv.com/categories/meetings, or just click on our on-demand link at civiccentertv.com, where you can view all of these meetings. And those meetings, again, that you'll want to be viewing: November 10th, 2021, special meeting of the Environmental Commission, November 23rd, meeting of the West Bloomfield Township Planning Commission, and the January 25th, 2022 meeting of the West Bloomfield Township Planning Commission, where this case was discussed and approved.
Tyler?
Yes.
I have a book I'd like to share.
Okay.
I don't know how much time we have left.
You have a few minutes.
Sorry. Okay, so I got this for Christmas from my husband, and I want everyone to read it. So, Leadership for Sustainability. And this is something that crosses all the lines. And I just want to read real quick to you about just a little excerpt from here. Okay. That's all right. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Wicked situations exceed the capacities of any one organization and even any one sector. Solutions require stakeholders to collaborate despite vast differences in their values, assumptions, personalities, disciplines, professions, generations, cultures, and sectors. Most stakeholders are trapped in silos of similarity that are self-reinforcing and protectionist, accentuating differences that hinder efforts to collaborate across those silos. So I just really want to reinforce the fact that we need collaboration now desperately as a human species. We can't be separated. I want to go so far as to say we need regional ordinances. It can't be township and city by city. We need regional agreements because we are all sharing these resources. So I just really want to push. We have to come together. And another one, I visited the Redwoods in August, this past August, and they wouldn't be there if not for crazy wacko environmentalist activists like us. That is what saved the Redwoods. I picked up so much literature when I was out there, and those Redwoods would be gone had people not taken action and saved them. I know Henry Ford owns the property. It's their property, but have a heart, listen to the people. There is time to change this.
Sally, 30 seconds with you before we'll say goodbye. Has your group reached out to Henry Ford Health System to discuss this? And if so, has there been any response as of yet from Henry Ford?
We reached out. We've written a very formal letter. On our group, we have a climate change expert. She gives presentations to large corporations. We have a couple of lawyers. We've got Amy Mindell, who has saved the forest you need to interview her next. She saved the forest over at Orchard Lake Middle School by herself before she joined us. And together, that core group of us composed a letter, and we sent it to every single member of Henry Ford's Board of Trustees, as well as their sustainability chief. They actually have a chief of sustainability over there who I hope is tuning into this. His name is Chip Ammo, and he is the HS Director of Systems Sustainability. So we have reached out directly to him, and all of the influencers over at Henry Ford. I don't know that we've heard directly back from any of them, but I think that their ears are ringing. So let's hope that we get some responses, and thank you for hearing our voice.
Appreciate it. Sally, if people want, very quickly, if people want to get involved with Earth West Bloomfield, how can they get involved?
Sure. Right now, we are maintaining our group on Facebook alone because it grew so fast, and it's a really great platform to discuss and share information. So you can go to Earth, capital EARTH, West Bloomfield. And we've been posting things on the Citizens Facebook page, and so far we're just online, but we're hoping to have some in-person meetings in the future, and maybe even have a letterhead one day. So, and a logo, that would be nice.
Sally, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tyler.
Appreciate it. We're going to take a break here on the Michigan Megacast. A very quick break. On the other side, apologies to Dr. Jamie Taweel for us being a little bit over time. He will join us next talking about waning COVID-19 numbers, what that means for you and your family, as well as how the continued impact of the pandemic is affecting primary care providers all across Michigan. That's coming up next. This is the Michigan Megacast.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior. These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different. One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games? Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate. So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Whatever gets you talking.
Welcome back to the Michigan Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. More information, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find info on all of our stations that join us every day, including My Michigan TV. Joining in the program now, once again, is Dr. Jamie Taweel, internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates. Dr. Taweel, good to see you again.
How are you doing today?
Doing all right. How are you, doctor?
I'm getting there. It's been a long year. So
yes.
I think we're finally slowing down a bit.
Yeah, it's been a long year. It's been a long couple of days these last couple of hours. So we're chugging along, however. So parts of Europe are struggling with a new variant with COVID-19, the BA2 variant of COVID. There's been some reported cases in Michigan. What do you know so far about this variant, and is there any information about it that people should be keeping a close eye on? Any differences or similarities to Omicron or to Delta or other variants before that?
So the BA2 variant, from what I understand, is a newer variant that's basically a step up from the Omicron variant. It's got a couple of things. Every time you have a new variant, you want to ask yourself a few questions. Is it going to be as dangerous as the previous variant? Is it going to be more transmissible? Is it going to be, are we going to be protected if we've had our vaccines? And the answer to those are still kind of in the mix. We're still kind of learning a lot about this variant, but so far what we know is that, yes, it is easily transmissible, however, not as dangerous. In other words, people that do experience the BA2 variant are going to have a little bit more of a milder disease. It's going to be a lot like Omicron, where people were having just, mild symptoms. Even people that were vaccinated, we're also finding that people that have been vaccinated have been really well covered in terms of having a much more milder disease. So we're not having these flurry of hospitalizations that we were having. However, it is more transmissible. So while it is more transmissible, that means there's a larger population that's being exposed, a larger population is getting sick. So there's still going to be a little bit of a spike in hospitalization, just nowhere near the fraction of people getting hospitalized as we were seeing previously.
We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel, the internal medicine specialist over at Grand River Medical Associates, joining us on the Megacast. Dr. Taweel, despite the necessity of primary care providers, there are too few of them, and trends are suggesting there'll be even fewer as current practitioners age and medical students with loans are going to more lucrative specialties than being a primary care provider. As a primary care physician yourself, can you talk about the shortage, how it affects how it affects communities, how it affects primary care providers too, that there does seem to be a reduction of the total number because of these factors that are at play in the medical community?
Yeah, I could talk about this for about 3 weeks. I have a lot. So there's always going to be a shortage of primary care because primary care is the person you want to see. And it can affect a lot of things. I mean, in Michigan specifically, we're in the Metro Detroit area. So we do have a lot of primary care physicians that are going to basically be available. But in upper northern parts of Michigan, or a little bit more less dense populated areas of Michigan, there's going to be fewer primary care, and that's going to continue to get worse as time goes on. Yes, people that are in med school are always going to chase. There's a fraction of people that want to take the more difficult to get residencies that are going to be, and I don't want to say that like that, but they're going to be residencies that are going to be a little bit more lucrative. So that tends to always be the big, with the amount of student loans that people come out of med school with, it's no surprise that they're going to go for specialties that are going to just basically pay more. Primary care tends to be a little bit lower on that end. Now, it's not terrible by any means. We're doing fine, but at the same time, why choose a career if you have options to go better? But also lifestyle and things play into effect. It affects a lot of things. It really impacts the ability for patients to get good care. Primary care is just that, primary. We're the first people you see. So if there's a shortage of primary care physicians, what are you going to do? There's going to be a lot more people going to urgent care. And when you go to urgent cares, you're not really getting standard of care. What I mean by that, when I say that, is you're not having a lot of follow-up. You know, I have patients that have been patients of mine for years. I know them extensively. I know a lot of the issues that they deal with. I know how all their issues, you know, interact with one another. I'm able to basically treat them a little bit more completely, so to speak. I talk to all of the specialists that they're involved with. I read all, you know, I'm coordinating care among different physicians and doing a lot of things to that effect. It's kind of difficult to do if you're in urgent care or an emergency room. And that's what people tend to start doing if they don't have primary care available, or worse yet, they don't even see a primary care physician. They're not getting their standard, you know, age-appropriate screening for risk things such as colonoscopy, screening for heart disease, all of that. And that can lead to bigger problems down the road. And, you know, studies have shown that people that go to primary care physicians with routine regularity tend to do better, less money in healthcare. They tend to be less ill in the long run. They're treated more appropriately, and they're catching things that could have otherwise been a bit more dangerous down the road. How it also impacts, I told you I had a lot to say, how it also impacts us as physicians, there's just a lot more people to be seen, which can be very difficult. You now have waiting rooms that are full of patients, wait times get longer, doctors are getting overwhelmed, the volume starts to go up, and it can become very difficult to start to give people very distinct one-on-one care when you have a waiting room full of people that are anxious to be seen. So it's not good all around, and hopefully that can be turned around.
So Dr. Taweel, why did you become a primary care physician? And then beyond that too, what can be done in the medical community among primary care physicians and those in medical schools that are consulting with these future medical professionals to convince people, or attract people is probably a better terminology to use, to being a primary care physician?
That's a big question to answer.
Yes.
So why did I go into primary care? I went into primary care for a multitude of reasons. My sister actually married a physician when I was 11. She's a lot older than I am. She married a primary care physician, and I was always enamored by him and felt that I loved the way he handled business. I loved the way people always kind of flocked to him at family gatherings and asked him questions. And he's always kind of been a hero of mine. So I definitely like that. But more importantly, I also just like the interaction that I have with patients. I have patients that I've seen for years that are super close to me that I consider family. And that's the aspect of medicine that I like. I like the relationships that I build with patients. Other people aren't so into that. And I understand that. Certainly, they just want to deal with the medical complexity. Surgeons want to deal with issues that are dealing with surgery. Not to say they don't love their patients and don't build amazing relationships. They absolutely do. It's just a little bit more complex, and it's a little bit more to their liking, and they like doing procedures. Our cardiologists they have amazing relationships with their patients, but they like to narrow it down to one specific issue, which is the heart, and then they go from there. It's tough to try and encourage people to go into primary care, specifically because that may not be what people want to do. You know, my vision of a family doctor growing up, when I said I wanted to be a doctor as a kid, I always just envisioned the doctor that I saw, which was my primary care physician, and then my sister married my brother-in-law, and it goes from there. Other people, they're more interested in more complex, and when I say complex, I mean procedure-based type of medicine that's a little bit more, I don't know how to put, just more, rewarding for people that like to do those types of things. If you were trying to encourage people to go into primary care medicine, I think it's going to be tough. There's primary care physicians, we do a lot of the paperwork of medicine. We do a lot of filling out forms, disability stuff. We do a lot of the, family medical leave paperwork. We do a lot of insurance paperwork, handicap plates. It just goes on. So that can be a major turnoff to people that are interested in medicine because they just want to do medicine. I often joke that sometimes I feel like I practice more law than I do medicine. As a primary care physician, sometimes I feel like I'm the therapist. I talk to patients about very personal things, and some people just aren't into that aspect of medicine, and that's okay. But if you want to make things a little bit more better for people to go into medicine, I think to reduce the burden of paperwork that they deal with, as well as give them more incentives. Increases in pay certainly would always be a benefit, as well as potentially offering them better student debt forgiveness, because student debt kind of becomes a big major factor into what they're deciding. It can often be the case. So that's a very small answer that needs to be this big. So
We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel, internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. Dr. Taweel, another minute with you before we'll say goodbye today. At this time, anything else that would be important for Michiganders to be considering in their own personal health and in their relationship with their primary care provider at this time before we let you go today?
Yes, go see them. I joke with my patients. Hey, when do I have to come in? And I always say, look, I'd like to at least see you as often as a dentist. What I want to see at least twice a year, if you're healthy. If you have other problems, I want to see you more often. COVID is starting to get a little bit less on the forefront. So I would encourage people to definitely try to see their physicians a little bit more, catch up on all the stuff that they've been missing. An ounce of prevention is definitely worth a pound of cure. So I want to make sure that people are getting to see their doctors so that they can catch problems before they become big ones. And we're catching up to that backlog. And the guys that are in primary care love to be primary care docs, and they enjoy their patients tremendously. We do want to see you. So I encourage people to do that. And that's about it.
Dr. Taweel, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me as always. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Dr. Jamie Taweel from Grand River Medical Associates with us on the Michigan Megacast. Appreciate his time. A big thank you to everyone else that also joined us on today's edition of the Michigan Megacast. Sally Wenczel, the co-founder of West Bloomfield, an environmental activism group out in West Bloomfield Township. Bill Pringle, the assistant curator at the Detroit Historical Society and the Dossin Great Lakes Museum. And then on the Oakland County Megacast, Kitty Dubin from Oakland University in their theater department, and Dave Coulter, the Oakland County executive. All of these interviews on demand sometime mid to late afternoon today. So when we usually have these posted on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you can also learn more information about all of our partnering television, radio, and other media outlets that join us every day and learn more about their other original programming as well. Also encourage you to go to our coronavirus page, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where we have links to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division's COVID-19 specific web pages, so that you can stay up to date on information on everything that you need to know about COVID-19, including learning about this BA2 variant that has been spreading through Europe and that we talked about briefly with Dr. Jamie Taweel on today's program. Big thank you to everybody that joined us on the show. A big thank you as well to our entire crew that makes this program possible Monday through Friday, live from 10 a.m. to 11 o'clock for the Oakland County Megacast, and from 11 a.m. to 12 noon for the Michigan Megacast. Our technical director, Calvin Brown, with me in the studio each and every day from 10 to noon here in our studios in West Bloomfield Township. Our Zoom producer, Jared Clark, in Troy, Michigan, at the offices of My Michigan TV, otherwise known as My, the king of television, Larry Nyland, our producer on each and every edition of the Megacast, and Maddie Mustian out at Master Control helping us on and off the air. Coming up next on My Michigan TV, it's Steve Lato Live, followed by Larry and Maddie Live from 1 to 2. We will return tomorrow at 10 a.m.